What's the most obvious lie a doctor ever told you to your face? Dr. Harmon looked me dead in the eye and told me my chest pain was stress. I was 29 years old, sitting in a paper gown in exam room 4 at Riverside Medical, and he said it like I was wasting his Friday afternoon. I'd been having symptoms for 6 weeks, a tightness that showed up around 2 in the morning and pulled me out of dead sleep. My left arm would go numb for a few minutes, then everything would go back to normal. I'd Google it, feel stupid, try to sleep, but it kept happening, and eventually, my wife Sarah made me go in. Dr. Harmon was the only cardiologist taking new patients within 40 miles of us. He was maybe 60, silver-haired, the kind of doctor who still had a paper filing system, and a framed photo of himself golfing with someone vaguely important. He walked in 12 minutes after the nurse took my vitals, glanced at my chart for about 4 seconds, and sat down. "You're 29, he said. You're not having cardiac events. You're having anxiety." He said it like it was obvious. Like I was the 10th person that week who'd come in convinced they were dying when really they just needed to drink less coffee and learn to breathe. I told him the symptoms were specific. The timing, the arm numbness, the pressure. I'd looked up the clinical criteria for angina, and I was hitting most of them. He smiled the smile of a man who has been managing people like me his entire career. "Sir," he said. And he said sir the way some people say buddy, like it's not a compliment. "If you had what you're describing, you'd know it. You wouldn't be sitting here calmly telling me about it. You'd be on the floor." What Dr. Harmon didn't know was that I'm a paramedic, 7 years on the job. I've watched people sit completely calm and describe their symptoms right before they coded. I've held the hand of a 34-year-old man who told me he felt totally fine, and then didn't. I know exactly what "you'd know it" means. I know it means nothing. I didn't say any of that. I just asked for an EKG. He sighed. He actually sighed, like I'd asked for something unreasonable. He ordered one anyway, probably to get me out of his office. The tech ran it, and Harmon came back 5 minutes later looking slightly less comfortable than before. "It's borderline," he said. "Probably artifact. But we'll schedule a stress test for next week just to be thorough." I wasn't there next week. I was in the ER 2 days later when the tightness came back worse than it ever had. The on-call cardiologist was a woman named Dr. Vasquez, maybe 40, tired eyes, no patience for anything unnecessary. She looked at my EKG for about 8 seconds and said, "Who told you this was anxiety?" I told her. She didn't respond. She just started moving faster. I had a 90% blockage in my left anterior descending artery, the LAD. Cardiologists have a name for it. They call it the widowmaker. Not because it's rare, but because by the time most people find out they have it, the conversation is already over. Dr. Vasquez put in a stent that same afternoon. She told me afterward that if I'd waited another week for Harmon's stress test, the outcome of that conversation would have been very different. I filed a formal complaint with the hospital. Dates, timestamps, his exact words, the EKG results, Dr. Vasquez's notes. I sent a copy to the state medical board and mailed one directly to Harmon himself. He never responded. But 6 months later, I checked the hospital's website and his name was gone from the cardiology department page. Turns out you don't always know it. Sometimes you just don't wake up.